I'll tell you later.
But unfortunately, I know all the speakers, and so I have a understanding of how they speak. So, notwithstanding the fact that I haven't seen what they've spoken, I think it's still going to make it. Okay. I think I've got the most boring topic in some way. Brexit and the legal consequence for Muslims. I say boring because I think Brexit, from a legal implication point of view, that is probably one area where it affects Muslims in exactly the same way as it does every other community. Perhaps in relation to rights and discrimination and so forth, it affects us more so, but in theory it affects everybody. But I just want you to think this. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of regulations. From hiring a car, to building a house, to wearing the clothes that you do. Everything is in one way or another dictated, directed, governed, or influenced by European directives, legislations, decisions. So, to talk about Brexit and its legal impact, you probably could go on and on and on and on. But I will only focus on some specific areas that I think are going to affect us most on a day-to-day basis. I should say, I was rather, flattered by the title EU, specializing in EU law. My interest in EU law goes insofar as previously defending people against deportation and relying heavily on various EU legislations. Although the main piece of legislation remain as valid as ever and will remain in force even if we exit Brexit. To put it in a nutshell, the legal impact is this. Every law made by European Union since its inception for nearly half a century, every law that EU institutions has made automatically become part of our legal system. And you can imagine that means hundreds of thousands of legislations, cases, decisions, regulations. And one of the things that our government would have to do is that if it wants to change that, it would have to repeal an act of parliament, the European Communities Act 1973, which gives direct effect to EU law. But if they repeal it without mapping every single directive and deciding which one they're going to keep, which one they're going to leave, it is going to create a huge void in our legal system. The other thing that's going to affect is we are different. When we Brits are seen with suspicion by French and Germans and others, there are good reasons. We have never been like the Europeans. Our legal system is different from European countries. We are a common law country, whereas most of the other our continental partners, all I think, has got a civil codified legal system. The way we interpret law is different. Europe adopts a process called purposive approach. So what they do is they read a law, they try to understand what was intended to be achieved by that piece of law, and then they interpret the law according to that, even if it means sometimes deviating from strict literal interpretation. Whereas we in the UK, we believe that if Parliament wanted to legislate more broadly and widely, they would have made it such that the language would be broader and more profound. We take a literary approach where we literally, strictly interpret law according to its literal meaning. But because of the European Union and because of the EU law, we had to adopt. Remember, we are part of the wider European establishment, so we had to adopt. So increasingly, our judicial system also adopted to this purposive approach. Now, what happens? After we come back, do we go back to our old system? Or do we remain, do we retain this approach? Some of the areas that you're going to have, I know some people, France is a classic example, I know some people feel very strongly about Europe and do not make much about Europe's commitment to equality. And one of the examples we often come across is hijab and niqab in France, because European Court of Justice, European Court did rule that the law banning veil was perfectly within the right. But recently, I think literally a few weeks ago, there was a case where a young lady was sacked from her work because she was wearing a headscarf. And she failed in the French system, and so she finally took it to the European Court, which upheld that it was a discrimination and therefore unlawful. So European Court does have a capacity to play a positive part, and by and large it has played a positive part. So many of the benefits you and I don't realize, maternity pay, tighter regulation in terms of ensuring better quality of workplace, to ensure minimum standard of living, in many of these things, European Union has had significant impact. Some of these things simply would not have happened. So one of the questions that that would confront us, especially Muslims, because we often are more discriminated than others, is what happens to those protections once we come out. Another area, some of you might know, consumer protection. When you buy a white good, a washing machine from, I don't know, one of those shops, usually you get 1 year warranty. But actually you're covered for nearly 10 years. So if the machine does something, misfunctions or malfunctions or causes accident, and it is more common than you think. As somebody who used to specialize previously on product liability, I can tell you, quite often indecent washing machines causes fire, including killing people. And it's more common than you would believe. And some of the protection that people have, the remedy people can access, is because of the European legislation. So it's far more wide. But I'm conscious that I don't have too long. So I will try to wrap up. Some of the equality issues that we take for granted, take for example equal pay between men and women. It wasn't our legislation. It wasn't our legislation which guaranteed that. It was, the European directives and regulations which enshrined that, and it is because of that we had to do that. But I'll finish with this. Many Muslims, Bangladeshis I know, Pakistanis I know, Somalis I know, Arabs I know, who moved to the UK from various European countries. One estimate says there's at least around 50,000 Bangladeshis who moved in the last 5 years from Italy and Spain to the UK. Many Somalians moved here. One of the questions would be, what happens to them? The other thing is, some of them would be literally separated from their families because some made them move, others did not. And all these times they had no barriers, no boundaries they could have gone. And there's a huge uncertainty as to what happens to them. So it is going to affect us in terms of our employment rights, in terms of product, safety and security around product, safety, security and standard at workplace. It's going to affect in every way you can imagine. And I suppose a fitting note to end on is that the least we could do is actually put some thought into it. And it may be one of those areas where Muslims can make a contribution without being seen as us being only interested on Muslim issues. Because the issues that matters in these affects everybody, especially the most vulnerable. So it is an opportunity for us to articulate a positive vision for the wider society, which will benefit us, benefit the wider society, and more importantly, rebut the presumption that we are only interested about ourselves. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much for that. Before we head into Q&A, we're just going to hear from two more speakers very quickly. I'm delighted to welcome Dr. El-Hamdoon, who is the President of MAN.
Okay, Brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Good evening. I'll try and keep this very short. I'm actually going to talk more about what the Muslim Association of Britain sees as its vision in terms of how Muslims should deal with pro-Brexit. And whilst it is one of those things that is going to affect everyone, and I think Talha rightly say that Muslims shouldn't just be focusing on Muslims and Islam, and we obviously need to always widen the remit as much as possible, but at the same time we have a duty to at least direct or at least participate in how Muslims should behave. I mean, we can probably say that from a religious perspective, and that's something that MAB continuously talks about, because we believe that the person's religion is actually a force for good in society. The more that a Muslim practices Islam, is actually better for society. Unlike what we are led to believe by the media and some of the nasty politicians, that religion is actually negative for society. The more religion you have, the more terrorism you have, and that's a completely discredited kind of theory. The reality is, and a lot has been said about this, is that more Muslims practice their religion, the better they have contribution to society. And we're not just talking about better in terms of their their salah, their prayer, or their fasting, but actual real changes. And I'm not going to talk about that today because that's a whole different topic in itself. But what I'm going to talk about is what we see as an important call of action, as Khalil alluded to slightly. And I think it focuses on some important things. The Muslim community is very much part of society. It is doing so much. There's so much things happening, so much contributions. I mean, Muslims are not just like, again, some people used to believe that they're just people who are, hiding away in their mosques and in their prayers and not engaging with society. It's quite the opposite. We Muslims are there, but we need more visibility. It needs to be, and unfortunately, it's something that Muslims probably don't do well, because especially when we're talking about sincerity and don't boast your achievements, and you should. That it actually goes against what we are trying to say, which is you actually need to speak more about your achievements. Say what you are doing, because that actually will contradict the negative narrative against Muslims and their participants. So we need more activities, but not only about that, we need to be seen more, and actually, in a way, we need to market more as well. Muslims are part of society in every sphere. I think we don't really need to actually prove anything in that regard. It's already well proven. Muslims are participating in all aspects of society, in every profession, in every sphere. The MCB produced a nice report, I think, a couple of years ago called the Muslim Pound, showing how actually Muslims and Muslim businessmen participate in the economy of Britain. About 10,000 millionaires, Muslim millionaires, so much, but lots of things there. And I think if you have not seen that, mashallah, are you one of those? So I think it's about that contribution, and I think again it needs to be shown and needs to be celebrated. And inshallah, MAB is organising a convention on the 15th of October, which is really directed at that specific thing, which is best of British Muslims. Celebrating our achievements in society and being proud of the contribution that we do. Again, we want to really advocate the whole concept of transparency. And transparency means that Muslims are ready to share what they achieve. We've had the mosques open days, which have been really great success throughout the UK. But it's not just about transparency in the mosque. We're also saying that Muslims should try to be more transparent within their homes. Invite people inside your homes, let them see who you are. Because it's about that personal touch, and sharing the moments of happiness, the times of sadness. I think that's also important as well. Part of our, what we're advocating as well is that as Muslims, we also need to not only feel the gratitude of being part of this society and what society has offered us, but we need to be teaching them to be. A lot of the youth are probably going down the slippery slope of violent extremism, probably don't feel that gratitude to the society. They feel that society hates us, it marginalizes us, and I think we need to really, Islam teaches us that, teaches us to be grateful, teaches us to recognize when somebody does good to you, and it's not, David Cameron that's being good to you, it's not the conservatives who are being good, the country, it's the whole country, the social system, the social security, the NHS, the education. I mean, I come from a generation where my education was paid for by the government. I know a lot of the youth now, probably all the young, they have to pay for their education, but still, it's something to be grateful for. That's the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I'm just going to rush through this again. Obviously, through times like this, finance is very important. Again, it's very important that Muslims, are caring about how they spend their money, saving money, also investing. But without doubt, doesn't mean that that goes against charity. In fact, we need more charitable work. We need more contributions in society. We need more volunteering, and that's happening already, being done by the Muslims. We saw when there was the floods in the UK, how, and this video, if you have not seen it, it's quite a nice video. You see this English man from the north of England, and actually coming out saying, if it wasn't for the Muslim brothers who were the first people to come and help us, it was quite, the way he said it was just like very, very natural and transparent. And that's right, and there is that participation. Muslims are, they're looking after the homeless, they are taking care of, there's food banks, there's lots of participation in that way. And alhamdulillah, one of the things, again, we don't celebrate, in Ramadan, there was over £10 million just in 1 month that was donated by Muslims, which is a massive contribution that shows that Muslims are ready to give, and they are people of charitable cause, if you like. I'm just moving on quickly. Again, investment. I think that's so important. Most of this is in your brochure. But also, we encourage. It's important about engaging as well. Today we have MPs who, unfortunately, they represent their parties more than they represent the people, their constituents. And the reason why they do that is because the constituents, they don't hold their MPs to account. Constituents need to be more pressurizing the MPs. That's how it should work. And maybe some people might argue that that's a flaw in the democracy that we have today, is that the MPs speak for the parties rather than the constituent. The proper representative democracy is that the MPs represent the constituents. And that can only happen when everybody participates in public life, engaging in different spheres, speaking out, using the different avenues that you have as well. Here, I think it's very important also to say that, just go back, hold on, that it's very important that we don't talk about countries as being racist. And I think there's a very important lesson, even in our Islamic traditions, about that people change. Things change, times change. Even the story of the people of the cave, which is very important and relevant about this, is that the people of the cave, they went away for the cave, and they ran away fearing their religion, but Allah showed them that, after 300 years, whole society had changed. That oppressive regime that was there, and it changed totally. But you can either be part of that change, or if you don't be part of the change, then change will happen, and you'll just be put aside. So let us engage in change, inshallah. We see the York Mosque example of how they engaged with the time is finished. How they engaged with the people, the EDL who were protesting against them, and that changed. So my final message really is that we need to increase our relationships, we need to increase dialogue, and we need to be more proactive, engage with the media, make sure that we participate in the different ways. Let's be positive about it. You know, we're not going to achieve much by just being negative and oh, this is going to look bad. It's rather there's a lot of challenges out there, but I would say that there's much more opportunities out there. And the Muslims, if they want to really affect society today, they have to be positive, they have to engage, and inshallah, at the end of the day, the results are with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Thank you. Sorry? Is there enough space? There's a lot of people out there. I think
Okay, our next speaker will be Abdul Sami, who is the London chair of FOSIS.
Ladies and gentlemen, firstly I'd like to thank Matt for organizing this conference and bringing us together. Actually, the point of what Dr. mentioned, it's one point which I want to start off with, which is that not remotely did this referendum affect the lives of Muslims, but rather society in general. And I think that on a positive note, the participation of Muslims in this leading up to this referendum has been huge. I mean, anyone ever questions how Muslims don't integrate with society, I think this has been one of the most successful events in terms of how Muslims are truly integrating and how truly taking part with anything which doesn't just affect Muslims but also affects society. So I think we should first and foremost be, so I want to start on this very positive note, inshallah, first and foremost. So I'm here on behalf of FOSIS, the Federation of Student Islamic Societies. Our vision and our goals are threefold. Firstly, to serve Muslim students and Islamic societies, to serve them, support them, and also to represent them on a national level, whether we're working closely with other student organizations such as the NUS. And lastly, we aim to actually unify Muslim students. I want to talk about today from more of a positive point of view as well. That yes, we've seen Islamophobia rising over the past few weeks and past few months. Yes, we've seen incidences on campuses. Just recently, University of Kiel. I'm not sure if many of you were aware, but even the payroll was vandalized recently. For all we know, these kind of incidences are only on the rise. But it's also an opportunity for us to actually capitalize and try and dominate and change the narrative through positive campaigning and through positive media. And Alhamdulillah, FOSIS is something that we really want to focus on. And some of our projects which recently we have launched alongside with the NUS with the Students Not Suspects tour, going around different university campuses talking about how Muslim students, we're just like you. We're not, there's no reason for us to be hiding and why are we being scrutinized by Prevent. A second campaign which Hamda has been really, in fact it was done in collaboration with Dr. Shinaz's organization, MEN, Islamophobia Awareness Month. Hamda, last year we had a record amount of ISOCs signing up for this. And inshallah this year we should be even better, especially post Brexit and post everything that's going on so far. And another campaign which I want to talk about, which is actually in collaboration with MAN, which is the Believe and Do Good campaign. Where, so not only are we just going to be sitting in our messages, but out there serving the communities. Believe and Do Good is a week dedicated to actually serving the community, whether it be through street cleaning, whether it be through feeding the homeless, these kind of activities. And that's one thing we have to focus on a lot. That this is an opportunity for us. Okay. Yes, Islamophobia is on the rise, but this is an opportunity for us Muslims to come out there and tell these people that look, as Dr. Omar has mentioned, that practicing Muslims is good for the community. People practicing Islam is good because it means that there's more change in society, people who want change, people who want to better society. And with that, I'd like to end. Jazakumullah khair for everything. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.